Hello there, welcome back to Stable Discussion again. Today, we're actually going to be talking about translations. It's been really interesting using ChatGPT with voice. OpenAI has released some really awesome models with that. And there's a ton of videos that we're going to go through today, just kind of talking about what's the current state of things. We're going to talk a little bit about how translation currently has this like human in the middle, bot in the middle. And we're going to actually talk about how to use a bot as a transcriber instead. And I'm going to do a little bit of a project and just show you how to do translation dictation and not actually using a translator or an AI translator, and how that's actually a better experience for chatting in general. So let's talk a little bit about the state of translation. OpenAI has released, of course, their awesome chat model where you've been able to just converse with your phone directly like this. Here's an example of OpenAI doing that themselves.
Hey, ChatGPT, I'm here with my coworker today. We'd like you to act as our translator for us. So every time I say something in English, can you repeat it back in Spanish? And every time he says something in Spanish, can you repeat it back in English?
Sure, I can do that. Let's get this translation train rolling.
Hey, how's it been going? Have you been up to anything interesting recently?
Mira, ¿cómo te ha ido? ¿Has hecho algo interesante últimamente?
Hola, bien. Sí, un poco ocupado aquí preparando un evento para la semana que viene.
Hey, I've been good. Just a bit busy here preparing for an event next week.
So it's really interesting because you can see this guy on the right side just kind of check out a little bit. He's just waiting passively. There's nothing he can do. He just has to sit there and listen and wait for something to happen. It basically doubles the amount of time it takes to have a conversation, right? You need to say what you want to say. You have this kind of translator picking up what you've said and then repeating it to the other person, but translated, and then they have to speak, and then you have to wait for that to be translated, and then you have to understand it. In this kind of space, there's this gray zone, and you see him just check out a little bit while he's just waiting for the next thing to be said, right? And so this is the key problem with this idea of having some actor in the middle of a conversation, right? It takes you out of the conversation. So there's this like human in the middle view when we think about translation in general. We're talking to a person who is interpreting our words. They're then submitting those words to this other person and packaging that up in a way. And then we're checked out, of course, while this other person's talking, came to the translator, and then the translator passes their information on to us. And really, this is like a summarized view, right? Like they can't fully comprehend everything that this person has said. They're just giving us a summary of it. And that's a key thing that like AI is improved on. So when we think about like a robot in the middle or this AI kind of in the middle of a conversation, they're actually beneficial in a big way because they're communicating what we said directly to the other person in its entirety. And then similarly, that other person kind of communicating their own language gets to us in the same way. But the problems that happen from a robot isn't that we aren't communicating in entirety what was said. Is that it may mishear us. If you've ever talked to a AI, there's times where the words that we say just aren't interpreted correctly. And so sometimes there's problems hearing. And when you're in an audio only interface, it's difficult to see when those problems occurred. And if there's problems hearing, there's of course going to be problems translating. And so things can get jumbled or a bit confused. Not only that, but we still have this problem where we have to sit and wait. And now it's actually worse in a way because we said in entirety what we said, and it's been repeated in entirety what we said. And now we're like sitting there waiting and like, oh, okay. It's a longer period of time because it's not summarized in a way, right? So this makes me think, okay, maybe there's a interesting solution beyond these two, beyond this idea of this human in the middle or a bot in the middle. What if we could get rid of the thing in the middle, but yet facilitate a conversation? And so that made me think, okay, what about having a transcriber? What about this idea of we're talking to this other person, but then let's have somebody sitting in the middle, a bot sitting in the middle and actually telling us what the other person said and what we said so that it's obvious, okay, when something happens, what occurred. And then when that other person speaks to us, we also get a translated version of that. And it's easy to identify when errors happened from the bot's perspective. And it's obvious to see what's translated. And you're not sitting waiting as long because you can at least read what you said while you're waiting for the other person to interpret it, and you can read it together in a way. So that's the idea. I was thinking about this a lot. I've been I had this conversation with my fiance's mother. And this conversation is kind of the same thing where we wanted to just really be in a conversation talking as a group. I just want to be able to understand what's being said, but we can't stop the whole conversation for the translator to catch up. We want to just keep talking. And so I started thinking, okay, maybe there's a better solution for this. So I started looking around, and of course there's like the Whisper API, right? It's often what people use to transcribe spoken words. And of course it's been created by OpenAI, and it's one of the open source things that they've done as well. So it's very available and usable by everyone. Very recently, like in the last 2 weeks, they released their turbo model of it, which increases the speed very significantly and the ability to understand voice. So much so that it can actually run on your local machine a lot better. So this was the first thing I started reaching for, and I started thinking, okay, maybe I can do something with this. But ultimately where I landed was looking at the new Realtime API. OpenAI has released this capability that we just saw earlier. So they've opened this ability up to have these conversations as an API. And while this doesn't seem like what I'm talking about at all, one of the things that it can do is during a conversation, it can basically output text. The really nice thing about this is as a result of this new API coming out, OpenAI needed to expose, hey, how do you use it? And so they've got this really great real-time console that they released the source code for you to be able to experiment with this. And so I've pulled that down, and we can actually see what that looks like. So here's that application running. So we've got a nice map over on the side. We can get the weather for that. We haven't retrieved it yet. We've got this ability to have some sort of memory in the bottom right corner. And then we've got the series of events. So what I can do is I can connect. Yeah, and you can hear the AI chime in there. I can click push to talk. Hello, can you tell me the weather in Boston? So that's pretty interesting, right? You can actually just talk to it. It'll use under the hood, it'll use some function calling, and you can actually trigger it to go to Boston directly, right? And you can push to talk and issue commands and that sort of thing. And so this gives you a lot of details into what's going on, what's happening with the audio, how those things have been done. But this is a great place to get started. And so I've actually taken that and I've gotten pretty far in my dual language translation here. Just updated the code a little bit, and you can see my efforts so far in being able to do this. Here, I'll go ahead and connect again. How are you doing today? Right, so we've got that. It translates there. 안녕하세요. I'm doing well. It tries to translate my broken Korean, but you can see every person who says something, you can see the output in both places. When I say something like, my cat is very sick, I'm very tired, and I just want to go home. Very tired, and I just want to rest. Okay, interesting. Not quite what I said. It's not a verbatim, but this is the kind of thing that you might find that, okay, now something's a little bit off. Now I might want to repeat what I'm saying. And it's nice. This kind of capability is pretty good. So let's go into the code and just talk about what kind of changes I needed to make in order to make this happen. So this is the original code before I really came in and started messing with things at all. So here we've got the basic React app. It's got a relay server attached to that I haven't explored too much. And then inside of here, we've got some pages. We've got really only one page defined inside of our app. It renders this console page here. And so when we look at that, this is the thing that kind of sets everything up. The one thing that is key to look into is, and we can look at like where these instructions are passed. There's this kind of client that gets set up in this client reference. So you can see there's this client reference to the real-time client. And the real-time client is effectively OpenAI's real-time client that they use. And so this is the kind of reference to that client that kind of exists per application, right? Per page, this will be created. And this is where that, like your OpenAI key goes in. So then here is like where the core real-time client and audio capture stuff is set up, and like where we set up how this thing works. So in here, you can see there's the ability to play audio. There's the client reference. And what we do is we can update some of the variables for this client. One aspect is the instructions. And so this is the first thing I had to change was I had to go in here and think about, okay, Like right now, it knows that there's like tools that are enabled. It has these instructions about how it should run, and it has this personality attached to it as well. So I basically changed it to this. So I changed it to, you're an artificial intelligence responsible for translating languages. Just repeat. Make sure it only repeats. The conversations you hear will be in these 2 languages. When translating, be sure to translate every sentence. If you can't translate a word, leave it blank, so that all users can understand, respond in both English and Korean. Output everything said since the last translation. Just in case there was like something and it wasn't output, I added that. No personality, just format it this specific way. So you've got the translated text in both languages. These are the basic translations that you set up. So those are configured here. Then we've got the transcription. And then you've got the tools that the client has available. So they have a key value store for memory that they've set up, which is just in memory. There's no Redis or anything in the back end for this. It's just general key value. And then they've got this tool to get the weather as well. So based on the latitude and longitude, it'll actually go off to the OpenAI API that I'm not actually familiar with, but it'll get the current weather for that region. So those are like how this thing gets configured. So what I did was I actually turned off the transcription in general. This transcription is actually done additionally to what the AI sees. This is only so that you can see what was said whenever somebody converses. So if we go back to the example here and I connect, you can see it says hello here. When I say something, that code gets output here. And it also definitely interpreted what I said in a way. But you can see here, it's like awaiting transcription. I've just turned it off because I don't really need this additionally to this. And it just runs up costs. So I just figured I'd turn it off for now. Additionally, so that the AI doesn't actually reply to us, we change the modalities that are passed to OpenAI. The modalities are turned off so that it's only outputting text, right? It's interesting that you're using like a real-time chat conversation bot, but you're just having it chat with you in text in a way, which is interesting. And I really like that they actually enable that because it allows this use case to work in general. Okay. And then additionally, when we set up the turn detection, I'm poking around at these sort of thresholds here, still playing around with these and trying to figure out like what these values do. There's a number of values that you can pass in here. So yeah, there's like how much padding do you need prefixed? And then what's the silence duration before it starts to try and transcribe something? Both of those seem fairly well tuned, so I didn't play around with those too much. We may end up doing more with this. The only other kind of details that I've played with is the interface here, of course. Just at the bottom, down here, I've disabled the map and those other areas, but I've added in this kind of table for the English and Korean to be spoken in here. But yeah, that's where we're at for now. I'm thinking next steps is going to be making this interface feel a little bit better, making it work better on mobile too, because I think if I shrink this guy down, yeah, it works, but some of the interfaces start to disappear. There's just some kind of quirkiness going on there. So that's definitely something I want to play with a bit. And then I think doing languages a bit more dynamically and maybe bringing in a tool for currency. So let's get started doing that, and I'll just walk through what I'm doing here. But this is a really fun API to play with, so I'm excited to just show you what it's like to jam on something like this. All right, so I've just been playing a little bit with the UI, so you can see here. Now we've got the whole kind of interface set up like this. There's now a new side menu button over here where I can bring up some of these details about the server that's running. So if I connect here, you can now see that's connected over on the side here. So that seems to be working pretty well. And then if I hide this, it keeps recording, doesn't have to worry about anything getting disconnected or anything like that. And I've moved this audio measurement here. Yeah, and it does seem to still be working pretty well. The only other thing I've changed around a little bit is just adding this guy into this translation space. And let's take a look at mobile. This is the challenge that I'm looking into right now. We have this scrollable space, but it would be nice to be able to make this experience a little bit better, because once I switch to manual, that push to talk button there is now tricky to use, right? So now I have to click this guy. Also, I don't think it actually has the hookups correct for being able to do taps. So I need to also play with that a little bit. First things first, let's go disconnect that guy and let's go in here. So what I'm doing here is actually under content actions. I'm just going to say add mobile less than 600 pixels, make this stack vertically and reduce the gap. So you can see there. Yeah, it's not going to worry about the display. It's just going to do some of that stuff. So now let me bring that back. Wow, that button has definitely done some weirdness there. And when we connect, now that push to talk button is very long. Interesting. Some weird stuff happened there. I guess this is align items stretch. I don't think we really want that. Yeah, we've set everything to have a width of 100. I don't actually need that. Okay. Okay, cool. So now we've got our interface set up here. So now if I do this, you can see things are jumping in the right spot. Cool. And if I still bring over the side panel, you can see that exists. Things aren't being written to it unless I'm connected like this. But yeah, now it's working. And yeah, it's a rough interface over here, but at least it's working more or less. We may actually make this go into this entire space when it's on mobile. Let's just play with that a little bit. Okay, let's see what that's like. So this is some code cursor wrote. So we've got our positions absoluted there. Okay, let's see what that does. So now, yeah, that is definitely coming in and taking over that whole space. So let's go ahead and refresh the page here. So if I connect and I'm talking, you can see it's loading in there. Now, if I switch back over here, yeah, I can see exactly what's going on. I no longer have the controls in the control panel, but I can see what's going on at least in here. So I really like how it's turning out. We've got the English, we've got the Korean on one side. This feels pretty good. I think something that would be nice is being able to switch whichever language you're discussing in. That could feel pretty good as well. All right, so I've been playing with this a little bit. I seem to be at a pretty good point. There's a few things I still want to tweak, but in general, this kind of works. So now I've got a little drop-down menu here. I can select different languages. And so when we connect here, now you can see I can be on talking. Oh, it's not quite picking it up. What's going on? This language thing keeps bugging me a little bit. Okay. Yeah, so I changed one thing and now it's becoming a problem. And this is just how like brittle sometimes this stuff is, especially when it comes to AI code. So what I've been doing is I've been updating my instructions so that it can handle multiple languages. And one challenge that I've had is I have English and then language here, just because I wanted to have it set up that way. So it's just like any language and English. But I think what I need to do is I need to do language. Ooh, I need to do source and destination. And so it needs to be something like this. And we'll have the source text and then the destination text. And so now maybe that'll be a bit better. So if we connect, I'm just going to open the side menu so I can actually see what's going on here. Hello. So now you can see source and destination are being filled out correctly. It's not listening to my German, but hey, I'll take it for now. Okay. So that part's working pretty nicely. So now let's go back to the console page. So now wherever I had .en, where I had this translation, this now needs to be source, and this one needs to be destination. And then where we had that was up here. This also need to be source and destination. If we refresh this guy and we start talking, hello. Yeah, you can see source and destination going in there, but there must still be, yeah, some stuff going on in here. So source, destination, I think that's the thing that actually updates the logic here. Yep, hello. Okay, now we've got that going. So now if I try out German, connect here, hello, welcome to America. Yeah, willkommen in America. Yeah, so that seems to be working out pretty good. But yeah, these are the sort of things that just end up coming up. So we had this issue with these instructions, just depending on like how this is formatted a little bit. Sometimes you just gotta play with it and just find the right way to do things here. But overall, this seems like it's working pretty well. I really like that if I put it into mobile, it looks pretty good overall. We've got these different abilities here. I still don't understand why that's the like last thing here. Don't quite understand why that's bugging out much. So it's like push to talk, but then already paused, please call record first. Yeah, because it's just the issue of like, when does that click finish? So let's go take a look at that. Push to talk. Okay, so we got this button here. So let's do on touch. Start recording, on touch end, stop recording. Okay. Oh yeah. Now we blew it up. Okay. So now we need to do some detection here based on whether it's mobile or not. So let's go ahead and ask Cursor what to do here. I have this button that does on mouse down and mouse up. Can I disable those methods when a touch is available or triggered? And we're also going to give it the button code. Okay. So let's take a look here. So certainly you can modify the button code to do this. So yeah, we do have this is touch device. So is touch device true? Touch start. Okay, interesting. So it's giving us some option there. The other place to handle this, though, that I don't want it to be in the button. Can we actually move this into the button? Okay. So we got this guy here. Button style. Okay. So now, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of stuff to think about in here. So this hasn't really been a stateful component up until now. So let's go ahead and pull some of that in. This will now do some of that detection. Handle mouse down, handle mouse up. So then do some of that stuff too. And then we need to grab some other components there. And then what we're going to do is on the button where we were spreading the rest of these values, we're just going to plop those guys in there. So now we've got those two handlers. And now maybe this will work. Hello. Oh, no. Okay, maybe I need to refresh. Let's take one look here. Hello. Oh, nice. Hello there. Only problem is I think computer just doesn't really handle that quite the same way. But yeah, it does actually seem to work pretty well. So I think we may just need to not bring up the context menu when this happens. Okay. But yeah, so those are some issues we worked through. Now we've got this thing working in a pretty good way. I do like how it's working out here. Yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. This gives you like a preview of what's possible with some of this new AI tooling today. Somebody who hasn't spent a lot of time in translation like me can now build entire translation applications that have really never been possible until now. The ability for us to use these kind of APIs in really unique and novel ways is really going to expand just what's possible. And I think now with this new kind of focus that OpenAI has on really enabling developers in our developer ecosystem, is going to enable more things like this. Might share the code, might just share it as a example. I'll just try to see what makes sense there. But whatever I do have, I'll drop it in the comments below and you can find it there. If you're interested in finding out more about us at Stable Discussion, you can go here. We're blog.stablediscussion.com, where you can find out all sorts of information about what we think about AI and some of the latest takes. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.